It's time to have your say, and welcome back to the Q&A. AskSCW is here for you straight after this. Answering your questions in the wrestling community once again this week for AskSCW. We're going to be touching on AEW, lots of WWE questions, NXT, and a whole lot more. If you want to be involved on the next episode of AskSCW, then all you need to do is follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, leave the hashtag AskSCW, or you can even drop the question here in the comments on YouTube. Well, without further ado, it's time for our first series of questions this week, coming from Noob & Co. And Noob asks what my thoughts are on Shotzi Blackheart and Tegan Nox on SmackDown. Will we see a heel turn during the Fatal 4-Way on this week's WWE Raw? And what are your thoughts on Malakai, Black and Andrade's debut in AEW? Well, let's start on AEW, shall we? And we can work our way into those WWE questions. And of course, Andrade, Malakai, Black, there's a lot of potential with these two, both debuting in AEW. I mean, and technically Andrade has been around for a few weeks in AEW, but his first week, El Idolo taking on Matt Sydal, I think it went as good as it could go for a match of Matt Sydal, and that's no disrespect to Sydal, but it was clear there was only going to be one winner. It's not really that money match that's going to pull you in. I need to see this, but it's good to see this aggressive streak that's coming out of El Idolo, and I think that he will bring a lot to the table. In fact, it's almost too early to make a full judgment at this point. What was important was he looked strong in victory this week, and that's what we got. So that's a great start. He was actually adding extra pressure and dominance after the match as well. It shows that he's going to take no prisoners. I'm not sure about the mask he was wearing on the way to the ring, but apart from that, this ticked a lot of the boxes for me on that first impression, if you want, in AEW. Some may say that the expectation is so high that maybe it was a little bit underwhelming, but at this point, I think we're growing into something with Andrade El Idolo, and I think given time and patience, I think he's going to be a very big deal, and I think he can be booked really well in AEW. As for Malakai Black, and I'm hoping I'm saying that new name correctly, it's still very early days for that one, but Tommy End, we'll do Tommy End for today, because that was the initial name that was given for him when he came in. Of course, it was switched very quickly. It was a big shock for many. Of course, his non-compete clause from WWE was expected to be 90 days. It was only 30. I did see something in the rumour mill that he could be debuting this week on AEW Dynamite, which I must admit I kind of dismissed when I first saw it, but when I heard there was such big hype with this show when he came in, I was surprised, but not perhaps as surprised as what I would have been, and I kind of wish that I didn't hear or see that report before. But at the same time, he comes in, he takes out Cody, he takes out Arn Anderson. What is the purpose, the role? What is going to be the character that we're going to see with this, this new Tommy End going forward? I'm looking forward to seeing what it's going to do. Of course, to go after Cody on show 1 makes a big impact straight away. So, I mean, it's waiting for the explanation and what it's going to lead to, and I do hope that he's going to be given a big role in AEW. I think in All Elite Wrestling, there certainly is something there for him to succeed, and I think he will be treated a lot better than what he was in WWE. Of course, one other rumour that was going around as well that allowed him to join AEW soon, of course, was WWE actually getting Zelina Vega back on their TV screens, and that would allow, Aleister Black to join AEW sooner. I mean, I don't know if I believe that rumour as such. Of course, I think I'm more inclined to believe the other rumour of the 30-day non-compete clause, which is what usually NXT talents get, and it just wasn't updated when he went up to Raw on SmackDown. But either way, I hope for big things for both of these superstars in All Elite Wrestling. As for the Fatal 4-Way on Raw, I mean, with the women there, we're talking Asuka, Naomi, Nikki Cross, and Alexa Bliss. Alexa Bliss, I suppose, is a heel already. I don't really know what they're doing with her character, if I'm being brutally honest. Nikki remains babyface. I don't see Asuka or Naomi turning heel anytime soon. Whoever wins this Fatal 4-Way, in my personal opinion, is not winning on Sunday, but it'll be good to see that somebody will be getting some momentum going into it, because this past week on Raw, all 4 of them lost an 8-woman tag team match, and for me, that made no sense, if I'm being brutally honest, especially when the other 4 people they beat were the people that they beat to qualify for Money in the Bank to begin with. But I personally don't see a heel turn, no. As for Shotzi Blackheart and Tegan Nox then, or should we say Shotzi and Nox coming to SmackDown, this took a lot of people, I think, by surprise, and I must admit, when I saw it as a tag team, I initially thought Shotzi would be one of them. You would have hoped Ember Moon would be the other one, as it's the tag team we're used to seeing right now on NXT, former NXT Women's Tag Team Champions, and both, you know, have actually just been on NXT TV in storylines. I mean, Tegan has just returned, you know, to attack Candice LeRae. You'd imagine that's going to go further into perhaps a takeover or something. Shotzi Blackheart, of course, is with Ember Moon in some sort of program right now with Raquel Gonzalez and as well with Dakota Kai, but I guess it all seems to be dropped. And with WWE, you know what it's like. What they're like on NXT, it's not what you're going to see on the main roster, or I even hate saying that term really, on Raw or SmackDown. For them coming in, SmackDown, they needed bodies, they needed females, and of course, if you have been seeing who's been in the dark matches, yes, Shotzi was one, and of course Tegan was another. The only thing I would say is that these two were a tag team this time last year before we got Shotzi and Ember as a team, so in some ways, I mean, this was an original tag team. They did go for the Women's Tag Team Championships. I believe it may have been at the Great American Bash actually last year. They were going for those championships, so and that was when it was the WWE Women's Tag Team Championships with Bayley and Sasha Banks at the time, when they were going on 3 shows, I think, all the time. May have been a random episode of NXT, I don't quite remember, but looking at it, yeah, for that reason they're coming up as a team here. It can work, and it can work in the favour of both performers as well. I mean, Ember perhaps wants to be in NXT, Shotzi wants to go up to you know, to SmackDown, and Tegan, I mean, she's been so unlucky with injuries as well. It makes sense to have her on a show like SmackDown, where, you know, it's shorter matches, shorter TV time, tag team matches as well, and this could be a good way just to steady her back in before perhaps going onto a singles push further down the line. And same with Shotzi. I think Shotzi will be very favourable on SmackDown. I think Vince McMahon and perhaps the WWE crew will love watching her on that tank. They can do some, you know, the comedic stuff that they've done with, like, in NXT with Shotzi and Robert Stone, for example. So yeah, I mean, this can work really, really well. It's how it's going to be presented, and they got a win. Most importantly, they beat the Women's Tag Team Champions on night 1, so that puts them in contention straight away. So I'm going to remain positive. I can see that there is the positives and negatives to this, but yeah, I mean, it's one show and they've come in and they got a victory. You can't ask for more than that. So I can see why WWE have done what they've done, and I can see the positives going forward. I mean, they did desperately need more women on the SmackDown side of the women's roster. Lorenzo Carrillo with our next questions for us now. Will any of the call-ups from this past Friday go to Raw after the draft? For example, Riddle last year. It's a fantastic point. Question 2, what would you like to see or expect from Toni Storm on SmackDown once she arrives? And number 3, do we expect changes happening to Talking Smack and Raw Talk once crowds return? 3 really good questions there, and like you said there, Riddle last year came to SmackDown, I think it was like a month or 2 before the draft, and then ended up moving in the draft in October, so at that point, yeah, he was only on SmackDown for a short time, and he's done wonders, you could argue, on Raw since going there. Particularly right now, Riddle is on a hot streak. But looking at things, yeah, I mean, with the 3 names you mentioned there, I mean, Shotzi and Nox have already turned up on SmackDown. Toni time is due on SmackDown, and we'll talk about her in a minute. And for me personally, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, they can do what they need to do in the short term, and when it comes to this draft, I mean, you wouldn't be surprised if 1 or even 2 of them ended up moving to Monday Night Raw. In my predictions video that I did of, you know, 10 NXT superstars that will be coming up to Raw and SmackDown, I did have Shotzi on Raw, and I did have Toni Storm on Raw as well, but of course both I said could end up on either show. So yeah, I mean, whatever happens, you know, we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, the draft, anything can happen. WWE doesn't really make long-term plans, it feels, with every superstar in the draft, so expect 1 or 2 could switch when it comes around. As for Toni Storm itself then, I mean, Toni time coming to SmackDown, that the caption Toni time makes me feel like we're going to get the babyface Toni Storm, if I'm honest. I just want to see her booked well. I don't mind how it is, if it's a face or if it's a heel, but I want to see Toni Storm in and around that top sort of area for the women's championship scene, because she's definitely got the potential. I love the look, the gimmick, that sort of rock chick that she's got. She's one of the best women's wrestlers in the world, in my opinion. So it didn't quite work out on NXT, but it feels like we're not seeing a lot of the NXT run in the video package. We've got a lot of the NXT UK Toni Storm, arguably the stuff that we saw from a couple of years ago. So I think and would argue that WWE want to go to that Toni Storm and to push that female on SmackDown. So at the moment, I expect a babyface. I expect someone that's going to win matches. Where will she actually debut? Could it be like Money in the Bank, for example? We still need someone to actually be involved in that, or will she be in and around that championship scene? Perhaps near and around SummerSlam. I expect Sasha Banks will come back, so maybe things will hold off. I would say, judging off your first question and second question, Toni Storm with the coming soon makes it feel like the plan is for her to be there long term, but we'll have to wait and see. As for Talking Smack and Raw Talk, perhaps they go back to being backstage like they were in the old days. That could be the method that could go here, like you say, with fans being around. Yeah, I would find it hard to see that would be the environment they're in, so perhaps backstage could be the place for them, but I'm excited for it. Fans are coming back to have all that environment. I think it's definitely worth it, however they present Talking Smack and Raw Talk going forward. But yeah, if I had to predict, I guess it's going backstage. West Coast Pop with our next question now, and a great one as well. Is it better for Bianca Belair and Carmella to main event SmackDown when fans come back, as opposed to being on a pay-per-view, probably in the mid-card, but where Bianca is actually on the poster of the event? This is a brilliant question, a loaded one as well. If I'm going to be honest with you, I'm going to say the SmackDown. Now, Fox seem to have a bit of a say here at the moment with pay-per-views. They did with Roman and Rey Mysterio last month. It feels like maybe they've got a talk of getting the SmackDown Women's Championship on this first show here, because you know WWE are going to want to go all out next Friday. And I've got a couple of feelings of why I think this has been moved away from the pay-per-view to the Friday night, because first off, like you say, a main event, that first show back, that first night, that's going to feel special. There's going to be a lot of buzz around that. It's arguably going to be as big as a pay-per-view, and I think WWE really wants to deliver on it. So to have a title match here, I think makes a lot of sense. Having Bianca and Carmella on here makes a lot of sense as well, because if they've announced Carmella as that number one contender replacing Bayley, yeah, for me, I'm all ears for this. I think it is perfectly suited for this show, and I think as well, Bianca Belair is going to retain. This is the perfect platform to bring Sasha Banks on night one and to give that wow factor. Yes, they could do it on the pay-per-view and it would feel very special in its own way, but to do it on this SmackDown, I think that will get people talking. It will probably pull up the ratings a little bit for Fox for the weeks going forward. Even if John Cena was to come back on Friday as well, I don't think it's going to be too much if you have John Cena and Sasha Banks returning on the same show. So for me personally, I think that's the reason why it's there, and why not give them that main event spot? I would be fully in favour of them doing so with that. And yeah, Bianca, she was on the poster for Money in the Bank, but hey, things change here and there, and it wouldn't be the first time that WWE has had someone on the poster that's either not been either a major deal on the pay-per-view or on the pay-per-view at all. So for me, yeah, I'm cool with it, and yeah, I think Friday is the right place for this match. I think that if Sasha Banks does come back on this show, then I think it's going to get people talking immediately when fans come back, and I think that's what WWE needs right now. They need to get people talking and buzzing about what has arguably been a bit of a stale product in the last couple of months or so. Next question coming from Austin Whitley. What are my favourite moments from the pandemic era? Really good question. This gives me a chance to look back and be nostalgic, because we're in places I felt it's kind of, we've missed fans so much. There has been a lot of brilliant moments still in the pandemic era, especially when you look there with WWE. I mean, of course, you look at all the companies, there's been some fantastic, great moments. I mentioned AEW, I mean, Stadium Stampede, just the double or nothing, Brody Lee destroying Cody in a couple of minutes to win the TNT Championship, all those sort of great things there. But when you look at WWE and see some of my favourite moments, I mean, head of the table character from Roman Reigns has been fantastic, almost from start to finish. There's not been a moment I've been bored watching the Tribal Chief, so for me that has to be a real highlight. The fact we got WrestleMania 36, even though it was an empty performance center, they managed to give us that entertainment at a point where a lot of us were locked in our homes, couldn't go out, and felt, you know, you could arguably say helpless to a degree, because you couldn't go and do your job or whatever, like, do you know what I mean? So that feeling, we kind of still got WrestleMania, and on that WrestleMania we got like the Boneyard match, the Firefly Funhouse, you know, Drew McIntyre winning the big one, winning the championship from Brock Lesnar, you know, seeing that magic moment, what it meant to him, and stuff like that after such a long epic journey. Those moments will always remain, you know what I mean? I still wish Drew got that moment in front of fans, but you know, you'll never forget that. So I think that still has its specialness in its own way. The Royal Rumble was absolutely amazing, probably my favourite show that's been booked of the entire pandemic era, probably when you look at that sort of, you know, when you look through those pay-per-views, and even though they were overexposed at the time, Bayley and Sasha Banks, when they had all the gold, were doing fantastic character work, wasn't they? They won all the shows, did everything they had to do, so yeah, some really, really special moments. You know, Becky Lynch as well, when she, you know, relinquished the Raw Women's Championship as well, has its special moment. Asuka, of course, there, you know, becoming a long-time Raw Women's Champion, and of course that Money in the Bank, some people didn't like it. hey, for what it was as a one-off, I thought it was a bit of fun. I enjoyed it. So yeah, there's lots of things there to look back over and enjoy. And you know, whether it's cinematic matches that we've had to go through, some of them not worked as well, but overall the ThunderDome experience and how things have been put together, I think overall WWE has done a great job. And to give a favourite, it has to be Drew McIntyre, I think, just about. But to see this Roman Reigns character being amongst this sort of last sort of 8-10 months or so that we've seen, probably even nearly a year now, the fact that we've had that in the way it's been given a chance to breathe and develop over time, I think will be a blessing in disguise for WWE, and hopefully it won't give them that panic button to turn the babyface anytime soon. But what's been your favourite moment of the pandemic era? Let me know in the comments below right now. I can't wait to interact with you. Next questions come from Mike, a Tanhabs Mike, and he asks, how would you book the vignettes between Cameron Grimes and LA Knight, where it leads to a rematch at TakeOver Vegas? I think Grimes should find ways to foil every chore he is forced to do, and that angers LA Knight. And question 2, as good as NXT has been, who do you think needs to turn heel? And other than Gargano, who is turning face, needs a face turn? It would freshen things up for NXT. I really think you've hit the nail on the head there with LA Knight and Cameron Grimes, really. You need it where he's going to be foiling everything or he's getting annoyed with everything, but I wouldn't do it straight away. I would have where, you know, LA Knight is making his life hell for a few weeks. I kind of, to give this back to a rivalry that I've connected with and used in previous videos, it really reminds me of Eddie Guerrero and Chavo Guerrero from WCW back in sort of 1998 time. We had the point where Chavo Guerrero kind of lost the match to Ultimo Dragon, had to do everything that Eddie told him to do, whether it was being put in matches that he was never going to win or do these awful things wearing a t-shirt. My favorite wrestler was Eddie Guerrero. Need to be put through that sort of feeling. You need to gather and gain more sympathy for the character. You need to be to the point where you see Cameron Grimes just hating the fact he's got to clean the car, LA Knight with all the girls, or being the pool cleaner, or whatever. You know, you need to see all this sort of stuff and see, you know, LA Knight, you know, you missed the spot. You need to see those sort of things at the start just to gather that sympathy. But as things go on, like you say, you have to find a way where it gets that boiling point for Cameron Grimes, where he's had enough, or he's doing stuff that you can see that, yeah, he's washed the car, but he's destroyed the tyres, or something. You know, he has to do something like along that line, like you say there. It can be funny, it can be golden, and with these two characters, they've made everything work so well right now. And like you say, it will build to that TakeOver Vegas match where arguably it will be double or nothing for these two superstars, where it's going to be everything on the line for Cameron Grimes. Perhaps even his, you know, his fortune against the $1 Million Championship has to be something along that line to get that closing chapter. But yeah, I think that there's a lot of potential in this. I'm looking forward to seeing how it's going to play out. As for people turning heel and face, it's going to be very interesting because NXT, I think the landscape is going to change a lot over the coming weeks. I really think that we've said it already with people already being called up to SmackDown. We've seen the likes there. We're going to get Toni Storm, who probably could be a babyface there. We've got Nox and we've got Shotzi. I want to say Tegan Nox already. And, you know, Bronson Reed and Karrion Kross, they're definitely going up there. Scarlett probably also. So I think for sure we're getting that. But as for people that could turn, that will freshen things up, I mean, if we've got Johnny Gargano doing so, do the Wade break up, or do we keep things together? I mean, Austin Theory, I love the you know, the connection he's got going with Johnny Gargano, so I would arguably turn him babyface to go alongside that. I think one other you could go with is when you eventually go for that Raquel Gonzalez and Dakota Kai rivalry. I would say that obviously someone will go babyface full on, and someone will make sure they're even more of a heel. And I think Raquel probably suits the babyface role of the two right now, I feel, because I think that she's definitely got more stock in her. I think fans are more on side when she's done the babyface thing. Dakota Kai really is playing that sort of heel character, and although I've enjoyed Kai's babyface run in the past, I much prefer her heel run right now. So it's going to be interesting what's going to happen with Ember Moon now that Shotzi seems to be gone to SmackDown. Will she continue as a babyface, or will she end up turning heel at some point? That could be an interesting one to keep an eye on as well. Next question coming from Antonio Churchill 2001. Can you do early 2022 Royal Rumble winners predictions? Well, yes, I can. We're going to be looking back at this video in 6 months' time thinking, what was he thinking? I'm pretty sure of that. But what to do then? How can I make this work? So I thought in my head, with both the men's and the women's Royal Rumbles, I can think of someone that's in and around that main event scene right now that would kind of make sense. Perhaps the up-and-comer, and if maybe a legend was to come back, maybe that could kind of be working. Although I feel in the women's sort of Royal Rumble, that probably wouldn't work as much, but surprise entrant if you want. So let's look at the men's first, shall we? I think your run-of-the-mill current sort of top superstar, Drew McIntyre, if he's out of the championship picture now for 6 months, I think would be a good place by the Royal Rumble to go full circle. He won the Royal Rumble last time to get in that championship scene, so I think that could, maybe like I say, perfect symmetry to getting back into that sort of area around WrestleMania season. So Drew McIntyre would be the one. If you've got an up-and-comer, someone that could be in that position, I think Big E would be perfect for that role. Some may argue Riddle on his current booking right now, that he's kind of gaining momentum. So, I mean, there could be an argument for one or two of those, but I will go for Big E to be that potential one right now if I had to pick it. If Keith Lee was to come back, he would be kind of perfect for that role as well. So, do I change? No, I stick with Big E for that one. But if a legend was to come back or someone as a surprise entrant, I'd go for the Beast Incarnate, Brock Lesnar. Brock versus Roman, I could see potentially for next year's WrestleMania, with Paul Heyman arguably in the middle there. So yeah, I would turn around and say that Brock would be my choice from that. From the women's side of perhaps established superstars, if you want, I suppose you could go with Alexa Bliss perhaps. I don't know how her character will evolve over the next few months, but certainly think that she'll win a Royal Rumble at some point in her career. For that up-and-comer, if you want, I mean, we've got so many people coming up right now from NXT. Could you see like a Toni Storm or something like that winning? Would be interesting, but it's hard to see with those up-and-comers. I feel that with the women's division, they tend to go with the established. As a surprise entrant, wouldn't it be amazing if Bayley made it back sooner than expected, but I don't see the one happening. But perhaps a Ronda Rousey for a WrestleMania. If you can get Becky Lynch versus Ronda Rousey, that would be a fun surprise factor. So there you go. There's some early Royal Rumble predictions, and we can look back in 6 months' time and probably laugh at this and say it was nowhere near. Last question this week comes from the Mr. 1925, and he wants to know my thoughts on Dave Meltzer. He says that he finds him polarizing, much like a wrestler that's been pushed for the wrong reasons. However, it seems the problem with his image lies with the subscribers that follow him in rather a cultish fashion and not necessarily the man himself. And is it a huge problem that half of the boys seem to value his 5-star rating system like it's gospel? It's just one guy's opinion after all. Talk about loaded questions. Yeah, I mean, with Dave Meltzer, first off, for the people that do take his word gospel, and for the people that follow Dave and respect all his opinions and stuff like that, it's great to see that Dave has that opinion. People respect what he's got to say, and of course, if people respected what I had to say like they respected what he has to say, I suppose I'd be a very happy man, because this channel, I mean, let's be fair, the patrons and the money would be going through the roof, wouldn't it? But Meltzer, he's been doing this for many years, and I guess that from that time comes experience. People are looking to say he's seen it all, and people will judge what he says, and like you say, like it's gospel. But ultimately, it is one man's opinion, and I must admit, I don't hold his opinion true and dear to me. I don't always agree with what he says, and sometimes I think when things come out, perhaps when he talks on his shows, he may say a certain superstar is returning. I would rather he would say, rather than like Edge is going to be in the Royal Rumble like he did last year, that he would say a former WWE champion is expected to be in the Royal Rumble this year, rather than actually give the name away. Oh, the program they're doing with this is this and this. I'm not a fan of the spoilers, and I think that sometimes Dave is too easy to give that information out. I would rather he would give a clue or a teaser of what it be, because then when it happens, he can turn around and say, well, yeah, clearly I said it was this person. For example, Edge is a former, 11-time world champion. You can say that. People can work it out, but you've not actually said the name, so that way it could work kind of a bit better. So for me personally, I don't really judge everything on what Dave says, whether it's match ratings or whatnot, stuff like that. A lot of people do, and a lot of people do respect it. When I do, for example, my retro stuff, I do give a shout out of what some of the times the matches he's rated, because a lot of people judge that, and it's something to compare to whether I think it's the same or different. Sometimes I'm more generous, sometimes I'm more harsh. It all depends on what I feel from my perspective of when I've seen it. But yeah, it's an interesting one. I'd like to know people's thoughts in the comments below, as I would with pretty much any topic we've talked about here on AskSCW today. Thank you everyone that's been watching the video. Like I say, please like, share, subscribe. If it's your first time and you have subscribed, then make sure to hit the bell on notifications as well. You can be updated each and every time a video is released. We're heading into Money in the Bank week and Slammiversary week, so you know videos will be coming on those topics, including predictions, so make sure to keep things glued here on SCW. SCW. But go and check out the previous videos that are on the channel right now as well, including which superstars will move in the draft, which ones shouldn't, which NXT superstars will be called up to Raw and SmackDown, as well as that. Speaking of latest retro reviews, I did that as well for WCW's Bash in the Beach 1996, when Hogan betrayed WCW and the beginning of the NWO, of course after its 25-year anniversary celebration this week. But that's all from me. Thank you for watching. Have yourselves a good one. You've been watching Ask SCW here on YouTube. Have yourselves a great day.